Tiffy, and today we're going to be talking about our fall baking recipe. What's the secret ingredient? The secret ingredient is pumpkin! So let's get to making some pumpkin muffins. You should receive 55 of these tiny pumpkins that you're going to be slicing individually. No, I'm just kidding. You're actually got a can of pumpkin because I'm not cruel, and also I'm kind of lazy when it comes to making things. So we're going to start with our can of pumpkin and we'll go from there. Also remember, if you make this again another time, you got 2 cans of this. Make sure that you have 100% pure pumpkin and not pumpkin pie mix. It's a very different thing and it won't turn out properly, okay? Now we said muffins, but you can make bread out with this recipe. Loaf pan or muffins, or if you want to get fancy, you could technically turn on pumpkin cupcakes. So let's go ahead and get cooking with this recipe. First thing you want to do is you want to make sure you gather all your ingredients and your supplies. Now, the only supply we have not given you is cupcake liners because at the last minute my wife decided that we really don't want to clean the muffin pan later, and so we put some cupcake liners in there for it. But if you properly spray and flour it down, and I'll show you how to do that procedure as well, you'll be good to go no matter what. All right, first thing you're gonna do is pause this video and go to your oven and go preheat it to 350 degrees. By the time you're done here, you'll be ready to pop it in the oven, and the oven's gonna be ready to go, and then a short time later, you'll be eating yummy snacks. So first, make sure you get your bowls and your whisk, and we're gonna start out with our cup of sugar, or our 1 2/3 cup sugar. So I got my cup of sugar, and we're gonna level it off a little bit, and pour our first cup of sugar in there. And then we're gonna take 2 3/4 cups. Okay, get that filled up. Okay, so there's our first 1/3 cup. And here's our second 1/3 cup. And so that is our 1 2/3 cup of sugar. Now we're going to move on to our next ingredient. Our next ingredient is going to be oil. So we got our standard vegetable oil, canola, or whatever vegetable oil you have. 2/3 cup vegetable oil. So we'll start with our 1/3 cup measure again, and we're going to fill it up twice and pour it directly into the bowl. Okay, right up to the line, and just pour. Okay, so now this time I'm going to be smart. I'm going to pour over this plate and not over the bowl.
And you're adding? And
I'm adding my vanilla. So there's my first teaspoon of vanilla. And here's my second teaspoon of vanilla. And now we're going to move on to our next step. Now it's time for some eggs. Oh, wow, that wasn't a good idea. Okay, we got our first egg in the bowl. Let's see if we can do that again. Oh, I'm feeling fancy right now. That's our second egg.
Well, I suppose you can always fish the...
That's our third egg.
Fish the eggshells out if you need to.
Yeah, you can always fish them out. And there is egg number 4, and it looks like somehow amazingly I managed not to get any egg in there, or eggshell in there. I got the egg in, no eggshell. All right, let's move on to pumpkin. Get this thing open. Let's go ahead and add it. So hopefully you've got a knife or a spatula, and we're just going to pour it directly in here. We're just going to be adding our pumpkin. Nothing fancy about this. Okay, so we're going to be really slow and careful when we start this with our whisk or whatever you're using. And you're just going to go back and forth until it is smooth and combined.
It smells so good.
It does smell very good. And this is the stage that you want to take your first photo. So this is where you're taking your first photo when you've got all your ingredients combined. Okay, you cannot overmix this either. Okay, this is not a stage you can overmix. Now, the next stage you can overmix, and if you overmix it, it will turn tough and chewy. I mean, not like super tough and chewy, but it's not going to be a pleasant texture as well. This is a recipe where first you mix your wet ingredients, and then you mix your dry ingredients separately. And then you're going to combine the 2 in 3 equal portions. So we're going to start off with our flour. So we're going to take 3 cups of flour. You don't need to sift it this time. If you want to, you can, but it's not really required. And I'm not going to because it's really kind of an extra step. Okay, you're going to level off your flour. It's cup 1. We've had these. We're going to go ahead and add the other dry ingredients. Okay, now remember, you have to have a leavening agent present. If you don't have a leavening agent present in your bread or whatever you're baking, it's flat. It's not fluffy. It's not good. The texture's not there that you know. Okay, so what do we need? We need something in there that's going to produce gas and bubbles. Traditionally speaking, in breads, you use yeast, but since this is a quote-unquote quick bread, we're actually going to use a combination of two leavening agents, baking soda and baking powder. Okay, now please don't get these mixed up, and please don't crisscross them in the recipe. Make sure you get the right one. So for the baking soda, we're going to start with, and the baking soda is 2 leveled teaspoons of baking soda. Okay, now you set it aside, and we're going to do our baking powder. Okay, for our baking powder, we're using we're using a half teaspoon, not 1/2, a half teaspoon. We're going to level that off. We're going to add that. Okay, make sure you put the lids on these, set them aside, and let's go to our next ingredient. And now we're going to add our teaspoon of salt. Please understand, this is a small amount of salt, and it's necessary for baked items to taste properly. You may not know the ingredient, but if you don't have it there, something's going to seem missing and something's going to seem off. So we're adding our 1 teaspoon salt. All right, so our spice that we're going to add is we're going to add pumpkin pie spice. This is a combination of other spices, and it's just kind of all in a convenient container. And so we're going to add 2 full teaspoons of that, and I'm going to be smart and not do that over my...
With spices, you don't really have to level, though.
Yeah, with
especially
spices,
if you like spice.
Yeah, if it's a little too spicy, your first go around, just cut the spice in half. If it's not spicy enough, go ahead and add another teaspoon. But please, you follow the recipe first before you start improvising. I cannot stress that enough. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and use a fork and combine our dry ingredients together.
You can also use cinnamon and cloves in place of your pumpkin pie spice if that's something that you have, or just cinnamon. It just depends on your taste.
Now, this next step you got to be really particular about because you can really screw something up. Okay? All right. You need to be more particular about this next step. You don't ever just dump everything in there. Okay? You're going to You're going to portion out small sections at a time. And I'm basically putting about 1/3 or so in there. And I'm going to combine it until it's thoroughly mixed.
You mix slowly when you first add the flour, because otherwise it will fly all over the place.
And it has totally flown all over the place in our household before, much to the delight of our children and to the chagrin of my wife.
It's true.
Okay. Okay. So you can see I'm now combined for our first batch. And so we're going to add our next portion of this. Make sure I turn this to the camera. Okay. And we're going to combine again. Now that we've added all 3 portions of our flour, it should look like this. It should be nicely combined. Go ahead and take a picture of it, and then we'll move into putting it in our muffin tin. Batter makes quite a bit, and so I'm actually going to split my recipe into 2 sets. Set 1 is going to be this little loaf pan, cake pan, that you had from this previous summer. Oh, sorry.
You gotta spray the sides too, otherwise it will stick.
You gotta spray the sides too. Okay, we got the side spray, and I'm just gonna spatula in the batter here.
Till it's about half full.
Till it's about half full. Okay, if you fill it up all the way, you will regret many things in life, mostly because it will rise to the full height.
Remember all the rising agent we added? Yep.
Yeah, you don't want it to go the full height. Your cupcake pans. Let's go and switch to that. Okay, for your cupcake pans, if you're using cupcake pans, even if you got the liners, still spray them. Okay, it just makes it easier, and then you don't have the cupcake or the pumpkin bread sticking to the sides. Okay, and I'm just going to use a cup measure here.
It's a 1/4 cup.
1/4 cup measure to pour directly in here.
Again, these need to be 1/2 to maybe 2/3 full because they will rise a lot.
Do not fill them all the way up to the top. Yes, I know the oversized muffin is delightful and it makes everyone happy, but if it overflows too much, it will be a mess, and the bottom of your thing will still smell like burned pumpkin bread.
Yeah, it'll come out on your oven. It's just a mess.
And if my wife doesn't like it, I guarantee your mom's not going to be happy with you either. We're going to take one last picture before you put them in the oven. So if you're doing muffin tins or you're doing the more the cake style pan, doesn't matter, just take a picture. And now we're gonna take those to the oven. Muffins are gonna take you about 25 minutes, give or take a little bit of time depending on your oven. And when they come out, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a toothpick or a fork, you wanna stick them in, you're gonna pull it out, and if there is no gooey stuff attached to it or only a few light crumbs, then you're good to go. And then let them cool. After about 33 minutes, I pulled my cake loaf out and I've got some crumbs sticking to it, but it is almost done. We're just gonna let it set and it's gonna cool and it's gonna finish. You just let it cool for a few minutes, take a picture of it. Whatever your final product is, send it to me, and you can either eat it now or in 45 minutes if you're not patient, or you can wait and glaze it later. And we'll show you how to do the glaze in the next recipe. Exterminate, exterminate, exterminate.